Welcome on in, everyone. I am back, and we are here for the Last Hit, episode numero 5. I've got Lyric with me. It's just a duo episode today here on February the 21st, right at 2:26 a.m., bright and early for us American boys. How you feeling today, Mr. Lyric? Glad to have you.
Yep, feeling good. Sadly, not able to have Dagged a part of the gang, and, I kind of like how things are shaking up so crazily where we're kind of having a different cast every week.
It's everywhere.
I missed a week, you missed a week, Dagged has missed a week. Who knows who's going to show up? I don't know, you don't know.
Yeah,
it's part of the fun.
Yeah, that's a little bad that I don't know who's going to show up. But hey, I'm here for it. It's going to be fine. So, I got to ask you, Mr. Big Brain Man, we found Uzi. We finally found him. He has been unearthed. He has been uncovered. But, sadly, not the entrance you would want to have.
No, came in, played against IG after Doggo absolutely trolled his game 1 on his Ezreal. Yeah. My God, it was rough watching Doggo just E in aggressively so many times get caught out. But yeah, came in, and they didn't win. They lost to IG, which overall is a failure. Not even just for Uzi, just for BLG as a team, right? I mean, you're stacked. We were calling them the super team. But I want to say specifically to Uzi's performance, I think it was probably better than I expected, because I wasn't buying into a lot of the hype in terms of like, okay, it's Uzi, he's just going to come back in 1v9 and be a god. It's like, no, I think Uzi's going to come back in, be solid, show like those glimpses of, he was walking forward aggressively in team fights, repositioning quite well, looking for those moments. Laning phase was good, but as would be expected of an Uzi roster, BLG did put a ton of jungle attention down towards that bottom lane. Did have some mistakes, though. Did have some weird flashes or like weird, ability usage. He was not hitting his zaps on his Jinx to save his life. But, he's going to need time. Sadly, he didn't play the following series against anyone's legend. So I have no idea what BLG's plan is in regards to
just trying to, dip his toe into League of Legends a little bit. For me, it was also looking at the player cam of Uzi while he was playing that game. The guy was having fun.
He was so
man.
stoked.
Oh my God. Like, watching the interviews at the end of last year, especially when he was playing the show matches, and like seeing the energy he felt when he was up on stage, and like he was happy. He was always talking about reminisce, like watching people playing, wanting to be there, wanting to experience the stage. And for him to finally do that is so amazing. It's got to be invigorating and maybe a little hypey. So maybe that's why we were getting some of those errant plays from him. But I, as you would have expected a lot more rust, but he still was able to play to the mechanical level we would expect of an LPL AD.
Yeah.
Still, as you had said, not getting to see him the second time around, not getting to see him again yet is interesting to me. But getting to see him for once with Crisp and get that duo out onto the Rift, it brought a lot of things like I'm foreshadowing to greatness, I guess.
I gotta say, I'm actually pretty surprised they didn't use him against AL. Like, the more I think about it, and the more I think about it in terms of like my experience as a coach, it's like, okay, you were willing to put him in for one series because game 1 went bad. So I just don't understand why, if you're willing to sub Doggo out on such like easy snap of the fingers in that series, why would you not just be like, okay, hey, well, we got Uzi on stage. Maybe there is a bit of rust. Let's keep seeing how this works against a team that I won't say should be easier, because AL and IG I think are, around similar levels, but still, like, giving him more of that time. The only thing my mind can come to is maybe Doggo was the one who, after that terrible game 1, maybe he went and say, hey, I played bad, just put Uzi in, like, maybe it was a little bit tilted. That's all speculation, but with how it went of him just being out one game, it reminds me a lot of how EDG just brought in Junja in playoffs last year after he only played one game the whole split, and it turned out once EDG released the videos that it was JJ getting like very down on himself, like, no, I'm playing so bad, just let Junja play. I cannot play to my best right now. So maybe that was the case with Doggo. If not, I do expect to see Uzi more, since since BLG were willing to use him.
I want to turn that conversation then, because that's what I find so interesting. We're over into the second half of the split, and we have only seen Uzi play one game. And the fact that we have to see...
Well, 2 games, but one series.
Sorry, I apologize. 2 games in one series. one series is what I meant to say. The fact that we only have that little bit of a track record here, and we are getting further on into the series, into the season itself, is interesting in its own right to me, because I do feel like Doggo has been making a splash in the LPL himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think Doggo's been phenomenal. In a majority of BLG's games, I feel like Doggo is the one stepping up to carry, especially with how Fofo has had, I'd say, a slower split. I don't really want to say worse, because it's not like Fofo's one of like the big detriments on the side of BLG. He's just not stepping up and massively carrying like he was in their previous split. So I feel like Doggo really has been the one with a lot of agency. So regardless of what happens with this roster, and I think we hit on this in either last week or the week before his episode, no matter if it is Uzi or Doggo, I'm just sad that both of them can't be playing in the LPL right now. You know,
I completely agree.
I feel like there's numerous rosters where either of those players would be upgrades. Oh my God, actually way too many. 80 carries in LPL. 80 carry in LPL is not what it used to be back in, say 2016, 2017, 2018. I feel like 80 carries probably one of the weakest roles we have in the league.
Really?
I will say it's gotten better since 2020, because when I came in, I feel like it was at its lowest of lows. Now you have people like Gala who have more accolades, have more tenure. You have people like, I feel like Fotix doing much better this time around than he was last time. Like, certain names are stepping up, but still, I feel like our 80 carry pool, the depth of that pool is nowhere near what it is for solo lanes or jungle.
I will say, though, at least for my eye, looking at it holistically around the world in terms of how good our ADCs are, I still would put the likes of like Elk, Puff in the top tier of ADCs, at least in the world, right? Like, they are still mechanically good in terms of the average ranking of ADCs, because I still see mechanical outplays. I still see craziness, right? Puff popping off in the series just the other night.
I feel like
I think
in a vacuum, I agree with you. But I feel like comparatively, even then, it's still one of our weaker roles, like, compared to other regions.
Because the LPL's insane, dude. Like, do you know where we cast?
Yeah,
like, come on, man. Every other role, you could just go down this 17-team list and find anything you could ever want. Like, it's insanity. It feels like you just go to the most full grocery store you could ever ask for. You're like, okay, today I need some top lane. All right, who can I want? Oh, we have so many choices.
You know, I do got to say, though, as one of the LPL casters who is not edgy and tries to take a shot at LCK every chance they get, I've always thought, like the top tier of LCK AD carries, like, absolutely terrifies me, right? Like Gumayushi, the fact that Ruler has been such a standout for numerous years. I have no idea how these players are doing right now. Way too many LPL games to be able to follow LCK during the regular season.
True.
But then you get to Worlds and you're always like, my God, these bot lanes. Like, thinking back to T1 at Worlds, or even players like Ghost being able to step up at the last international. So, I think we could do better. And we could do better by having both Uzi and Doggo as starters.
Oh, yeah. I guess for me, it's like I'm in the head of Weiwei. Like, what do you do? It's so interesting. I mean, I guess you just keep going bot lane.
Yeah.
You just say goodbye to Breathe. Have a good one up there and see who you get in bot lane, I guess, and who's performing better on the day. But I still think that question is so interesting, and if we will start to see more of Uzi, right? Because the whole conversation started of we finally got to see Uzi, but what will we see more of him? Because gotta say, we have a long time to go. There's a lot more games, Lyric, but we're starting to get towards the end of the spring split, and it's starting to get down to the wire. So
we have, what,
it gets a little bit scary.
4 weeks left, I think. Yeah, week 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yep. Stop it. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. But talking about LPL a little bit more, there's no undefeated team anymore. But also, Lyric, listen to me. Listen good.
Okay.
There is also no winless team. Crazy is our game. Yeah, see, there's no losing team. There's no fully losing team. There's also no undefeated team. I think we're in a good place in the LPL.
So are you trying to say our league isn't great or trash? We're just mediocre. Is that your opinion?
No, it's that everybody is good, Lyric. Stop putting words in my mouth.
No, you're bringing participation awards over from NA. No.
Yes. I am. They're imported. I'm sorry.
Oh, my. I do got to say, it is pretty nice that, just kind of taking the spirit of that point, that I do feel like this is one of the most competitive splits of LPL, especially since I've been a caster here. Maybe only one other stands out in terms of maybe 2020 summer. But We'll start with WE. Good to see WE get a win. I'm still
all right.
Still not high on this WE roster, whatever. They have Beishang back.
They immediately lost their streak that we were trying to build for them. Me and Ox were like, this is it. This is the start. They're going to streak to infinity like they tried to in playoffs last year. And at the first hurdle, it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Which, I'm kind of surprised. Maybe not surprised that the streak didn't keep going. They got 2-0'd by OMG in their following series. They beat LGD in a 2-1 fashion, but I kind of expected Beishang to come in and to bring more stability to the roster. Like, sure, when you look at WE, I still feel like my biggest problem is their side lanes, like Biu, and then whether it's Stay or Xing with Kadai in the bot lane. So I guess there's only so much you could do as a mid-jungle. But, man, Beishang was, like, always in our conversation for one of the best junglers in the league. When WE were going on that streak in regular season before they had the big playoff run, right? In regular season, it was all about Beishang. In playoffs is when it transitioned to being more about Shanks. You still have Shanks and Beishang. You still have this really, like, high-quality mid-jungle duo. So I expect WE to pick up more wins. But with how thrashed they got by OMG, they're going to need to pull things together fast. Which, to be fair, right, to add the caveat, I guess we have no idea how much practice Beishang's had with the team right now. Because you assume for WE, since they were having to use View, they were probably just using all their time scrimming with him. So could be a little bit of a slow middle start.
I will say I've liked, something along those lines. Words. Yeah. I've liked his prevalence of the volley bear, and I feel like he does fit right into the meta that the jungle is right now. But against that series against OMG, it was so interesting to see that aggression for Beishang be completely tempered and not be able to be unlocked in any real fashion. And it does worry me because, right, we were looking back at the heyday of that combo, the mid-jungle duo, but now you look across the LPL and the mid-jungle duos are insane. And that leads me to wanting to talk about OMG because in that series specifically, we got to see the OMG mid-jungle duo do crazy things. And Cream is right back to his old graces, it feels like. And yes, there have been some stumbles this year, but for me, like OMG from the start have already like kind of grasped my heart because the fact that they do keep a lot of the pieces that they were using last year. Again, I've said it a million times, but
there's a pretty big disparity in what OMG have done to our hearts because you said that they've taken yours, they've broken mine.
You know what? Stop! I'm gonna get my soapbox out, Lyric. I'm gonna mute you, and we're not gonna have you talk anymore. But OMG, like, you rarely see a team hold over as many players as OMG. And, EDG rightfully so did, but they won the world championship. OMG did not. And to see them commit there and have Cream as the centerpiece still, but have everybody else stepping up to the plate is so, so important to me. And I think that this team really can be the dark horse that they wanted to be last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, Mazel. Those are all very pretty words.
Weren't they?
Flowery, like feelsy good times.
Yeah.
But man,
it's like I almost get paid for using words. It's almost.
I don't believe in this team anymore at all, which is crazy. Because I think it was the first episode of The Last Hit where I came in and said, like, I think this team's going to be a top 3 team. I believe in them. They're looking solid, but I feel like there's quite a few teams in LPL who you watch week to week and you see there's really no like trajectory of growth. They just look the exact same. You know the strengths, you know the weaknesses, and it is what it is. So
kind of sus.
Yeah, for OMG, they're that team to me. Their mid jungle's really solid. Shanji as well. I don't think Shanji's as big of a lane dominant player as it looked like he was going to be at the start of the split when he was pulling out the cheeky picks like the Rumble, but still a phenomenal team fighter. Their bot lane to me is still super sus. I know we were highlighting Cold quite a bit at the end of summer last year, and especially coming out of Demacia Cup this year, but I feel like Cold and Abel have just been so flippy in terms of their laning phase. I remember we saw the clip with the Amumu of where Cold just diving in under turret. I remember them picking their Samira Rel combo in the last game against the composition that there's no possible way where they will ever be able to get Samira in against the range and the depth of whoever they were playing against. So for me, OMG, I feel like their bot lane will struggle too heavily against competent teams. Aki, I feel like is hit or miss, and then Cream's just kind of left by himself of, if Cream gets spanned out of all of his high agency picks and we see him go back to things like Victor and Oriana, it's like, sure, I don't think Cream's bad on those champions by any means, but you're not going to be able to just solely influence the early game the way you need to be able to get OMG across the finish line. So I do think it's respectable OMG were able to keep Cream specifically. I'm not surprised by them keeping the other three. Like, come on. Like, I like Aki a lot. Who's trying to pick up Aki, Abel, or Cold? Probably no one. Cold also, long chiseled veteran of OMG. This is probably going to retire here like a true brother. So
a true lifer.
Exactly.
For OMG.
He's going to do what we thought Rookie would do or the Shy would do, but he's going to commit.
There you go.
Or I'm going to say this right now, and the next split he's going to go to. And
that's what I'm hoping for.
We'll say Anyone's Legend. Next split he'll be on Anyone's Legend, which will piss me off because, man, I love Chocho. Chocho deserves to be on a team. That guy is crazy.
Can I talk about crazy, though, really quick? Because RA Cube has been crazy. The dude, all right, I know RA is a little crazy themselves. Not as much as maybe their 2021 spring selves. But, dude, in their last series, no matter, even if they lost the first one, or not last series, I guess, but the series against LGD, even if they lost the first game, Cube was smurfing on people on the Renekton. He was like 4-1 by the end of it. And then both other games when they came back in that series, the guy was smashing. He played the Scion in game 2 and nobody could kill him. Hey, rising in the stonks here in the LPL top lane, I feel like. Just saying.
My God, you are the hero of the bottom.
I am. I had to put away my cape, but I mean,
you're coming in hyped on OMG, RA. You're trying to get us talk about W. Man.
Yep.
RA are probably the least exciting team in the LPL to me, which is
oh my God. Have you watched their games? I had to develop chameleon eyes to cast their game. I am going to become a chameleon by the end of I have to cast 6 of their series. I'm going to be able to look at 2 things at once. That's how it's going to, honestly, I have a 27-inch monitor. I have to utilize the whole thing to be able to see their fights. And honestly, I find it impressive.
No, what I find impressive is how what you've done mentally. You've realized, wait, I'm casting 6 RA series. Oh my God. Like, you go into this hypnotic mind state. You lie to yourself. You lie to yourself that you actually enjoy watching this team. I gotta say,
it's literally the essence of the LPL, though. Like, crazy is our game. Well, RA is crazy. All right, they threw Baron twice. I don't even know, man. That series did some
crazy and bad synonyms now.
No, they're not. It's crazy is its own word. All right, Lyric, and it's a good time, and that's all I'm saying. As a play-by-play, when I get chaos, it means that I get to have more fun at my job. Because I get to yell more loudly.
You know why RA's recent series are having chaos? Because RA's last 3 series were against TT, LGD, and Anyone's Legend.
Exactly.
But
I've casted every single one of those series.
Those series can't happen. Wonderful. Those series can't happen anymore, Mazel. They can't happen.
Chameleon eyes. That's all I'm saying.
RA were so exciting last year, in my opinion, which is hilarious because their playstyle was not. RA last year were like, hey,
Dude, 2021 spring RA was amazing, though.
Do you know the definition of amazing?
I did a segment that was Storm in a Teacup, a reference to Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I had an amazing time casting a game afterwards, and it was wonderful.
Okay.
All right?
So, now let's move away from the fact that every team has wins. Let's move to the opposite side where teams are actually good.
Isn't that where we've... Okay, fine. So you want to go talk about the one lost chunk of 5 teams at the top of the table? Let's do it. Let's open that can of worms, all right?
Yeah, this seems pretty good. There we go. That's all I got to say.
They're pretty good. All right, cool. It's fine. But no, in all actuality, that top of the table is very, very scary. And now that we got to see, LNG take a loss, it really evens things up. But you still have such dominant teams at the top, and they all, I feel like, have found the style that fits for themselves.
Yeah.
To an extent.
And I got to say, when I look at our top 5 teams in the LPL, I would feel comfortable sending any one of these teams to MSI. Not saying that any of them are like world beaters. I do not feel like we have a team that sticks out as strongly this split as we have in past splits, whether it was like TS or JDG in 2020 or teams like RNG, EDG, FPX last year. Right now, it's a little bit of a mess, but I still feel like all these teams have very clear strengths, like you were just saying, right? For V5, it's the mid jungle, it's their aggression. Like V5 are probably the most aggressive team in our top half of the standings. Then you have RNG coming out with, once again, very solid mid. I feel like their map play overall has been really good. How they utilize side lanes, Bins coming back into form. LNG and Weibo to me are both weird, just because when they do drop games, they drop them in like really strange ways, like LNG versus RNG the other day, where LNG are like up, they have that really like cheeky Baron sneak that they get, but then they kind of just default to trying to, I don't want to say like run it down as an int, but like storm down one lane and just try to force a siege against a comp that has like 10 times more wave clear, 10 times more range. Then they get picked off, and then RNG is control again. So I feel like LNG and Weibo both are kind of strange, but both teams are improving. I feel like out of the top teams, they're the teams that have like the clearest trajectory of improvement. And I mean, Edward Gaming's Edward Gaming. What do you want?
Still doing some experimentation, still having some fun with it. You just get to be that way, I guess, when you're Edward Gaming. But it's that next chunk, I guess, in the middle, right? Fighting for the last spots in the playoffs there, at least in the midway of the season. That like OMG, JDG, Top Esports, FPX. It's crazy to me that like that top 5 has become that household name of the spring split of 2022 in the LPL, but we have so many big name organizations that are scratching and clawing to try to make sure they can get into playoffs.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing will be the battle between like maybe top FPX, OMG, and IG. I think JDG, from what I've seen, I expect him to keep going at like a decent pace. Maybe not break into that top 5, but be around that like 6th, 7th. OMG, I can see falling. FPX, I don't expect to fall, but they're kind of the same. Like you don't see a ton of improvement week to week. They are like the same team that they are, and they'll beat who they beat through bot lane, and they'll lose.
I do expect Clid to have some more improvements as it goes. Like I feel like it's going to be a hurdle system with them, especially if you're going to see Clid show up in a different way every week.
That's true, and I will say, I feel like Clid has come in a lot stronger than I expected him to. Not in terms of like individual form, because I mean, Clid was coming off a pretty decent Worlds performance as well. Just in terms of like, okay, coming back to China, having to integrate with a new roster, having to also kind of hold Gory's hand, because I assume Clid's Mandarin is much better than Gory's. And the fact that FPX have still been able to be solid, I think is like a very good sign to Clid. The most interesting team in this middle of the pack fighting for the playoff spot to me, though, is IG. Just for the fact that we were just talking about, right? IG beat BLG. Sure, they did just get 2-0'd by EDG. That might have been yesterday. So yesterday or the day before, where IG were winning in both early games, keeping it extremely close. But sadly, they just didn't have the like discipline in terms of like certain small map movements, whether it's things like, okay, well, Shun's coming out of base after the whole team resets first, walks into the enemy jungle when it's actually EDG's timer to make a play, gets picked off, EDG can now pivot to Dragon or something like this. If IG can clean that up, like, my God, this IG team is insane, and I'm sad. Because last week you weren't here. Last week you were going to have your hot take, which is a take that actually everyone ended up agree with, the fact that this IG is better than last year's IG, and I think that's something that you can still see, that this IG is a team, by the time, the development does come through, by the time, they do figure things out, I think they're going to be one of the funnest teams to watch in the LPL. Heck, they already are.
I'm a Shun fan all day long. I will always be a Shun stan. But in all reality, like that middle of the pack is where I find most interesting, because you can always talk about the top teams and stuff like that, but it's just so funny to be the swap up of power scaling we've gotten, right? Like you've got V5 at the top of the table because of what they did in the offseason, the powerhouse that they brought to the table, and it's so funny to be see those early sentiments that we saw in the LPL with all these super teams being put together, kind of working out for them.
Speaking of IG, something I find very interesting is they actually just announced it on Weibo. So, me and you actually getting to talk about news when it's relevant news, is that they announced that Wink is going to be coming back on the roster.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to pan out for them.
Interesting.
Because I feel like on has been decent for IG. Wink was kind of hit or miss, in my opinion. It's really weird because I feel like Wink has had times where he looked like solid, like when I think back to his E-Star days. Even thinking back even farther, like the times he subbed into RNG, it's like, okay, he was always pretty solid. But on IG, I even think Puff looked better than Wink did, which is why I feel like they would commonly just decide to bring Puff back in. So I think this will be really cool to see if they are able to use Wink better now that they do have different pieces in both top and mid. You know, we've seen Zika working out phenomenally for them.
Actually, yeah.
And even just having like new coaching staff in a new direction, right? Because heck, the big thing about Wink that was always touted from like either the community or like people who like know Mandarin can hear interviews was that Wink is apparently a shot caller. You are not shot calling that former IG roster in my mind. You're not. It has the Shy. It has Rookie.
Not.
You are not stepping. You're not stepping on the Shy and Rookie's toes. But here we have a really young squad with new players, a different coaching staff. I mean, it could enable maybe even another improvement to the IG roster.
Yeah, I think that we're gonna have to keep our eyes out for that one and see how that kind of unfolds. Just so interesting that kind of happens and that we get to talk about it a little bit. That it just happened as well. Something I'm super excited about, though, Lyric, and we're going to go back to the top of the table conversation because LNG are taking on V5 this week, my dude. We get to cast it. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. Every single matchup is exciting for me. We're obviously going to start with the center stage, but we're going to talk about every single one of these matchups because they're all very fun to dive into. Rookie versus Doing B. I want to leave it at that. Like that's all I need. I feel like these legends speak for themselves, but to see it happening, it's gonna be so fun.
Yeah, the battle of world champions, right? I mean, heck, both these guys being the first and second world championship mid laners for the LPL. I think it's super cool. I will say in regards to this matchup, just if we're gonna give opinions on who's gonna come out ahead. I mean, I think Rookies just squarely looked better than doing B this split.
Is it not influenced by your V5 love at all? You promise it's not biased? You promise? As an analyst. You put your analysis brain on bet. I don't know if that's how you say it.
Transitive property. We saw Xiaohu completely dominate Doing B in it was one of the games. I think it was game 2 where he was on Corki versus Vex because Doing B made this like really bad roam timing. I think we also did see Xiaohu solo kill him one game, and Rookie solo killed Xiaohu. Therefore, Rookie comes out ahead. But I also do
results-based analysis.
I do feel like just in terms of laning, I mean, Rookie in my mind has always been a better laner than Doing B. Like that's not controversial or weird to say. Rookie is like the gold standard for how you can lane, especially on certain champions like Orianna. Like. There's almost no one better. There might be no one better at Orianna than Rookie. The fact that he's finding that was the matchup he solo killed Xiaohu on. It was Orianna versus might have just been the normal Orianna versus Corki, but still flashes under tower, solo kills him at level 3, gets out, flashes the emote. You love to see it, and I really just feel like this is another split where Rookie has just been able to come out rejuvenated and revitalized. He's looking really good. I do gotta say, right now on my second monitor, V5 have dropped a game to LGD, so maybe this is going to look like a total meme whenever this episode gets released. But yeah.
Can I just say, though, like, it works out no better because the meta is so beautiful for both these mid laners, right? You get both of their power picks, both of their comforts coming through here in a lot of ways. But for me, it's the flexibility. It's the craziness that we have the possibility of getting, especially from Doing B's side.
I feel like we actually don't, to go the other direction. Like,
really?
I feel like
I'm hoping.
I feel like it's much harder to run things that he probably would love to run right now. The Kleds, the Renekton's, the Malphites, the Scions.
Is it though? Is it?
I feel like early laning phase against the mid lane meta champions right now would just be way too hard, right? Like playing Kled versus, whether it's the Oriannas or the Victors. Like sure, you'll be able to probably get your prio, but still, I think it could be quite hard, especially just with the emphasis on scaling now.
It just brings out Tryndamere. It's fine. Just, it's totally
But
fine.
that's not off meta. That's not off meta.
That's not
a classic do and be pick. You're making me think of the Kleds, the Malphites, the.
I would love that, but I still want to see some spice in that mid lane. Obviously, Rookie has his tried and true, and especially now that Orianna has just like skyrocketed it into the meta. I feel like it just fits so beautifully for him. But that's where I want to open up the conversation to the mid jungle duos, because that is what makes it even more exciting. I said at the beginning of the split, V5's mid-jungle duo, for me, have the possibility to be one of the deadliest duos in the future and history of LPL, right? Like, these two playing together finally is insanity to me. And on the other side, you have another duo who's just this guy. You have the king of the jungle in Tarzan. I mean, he's swinging around on vines, killing people. But also, he has Doinb there as the duo. And I think when we see these two teams clash, that is what's going to be so integral, especially the early focus from the junglers and how that coincides with the mid lane presence.
I do got to go back and just give Doinb credit in terms of mid lane picks, to go just really quick to say, because he pulled out the Zeri. He pulled out the Zeri.
There you go.
Massive respect to him for that. But I think these are by far the two best mid-jungle duos in the LPL right now. And it's like, even just setting it up, right? You have LNG, where it's like, okay, Tarzan, I still think Tarzan is the best jungle in the LPL right now, but setting back to last year, Tarzan and Doinb were the best in their role when it came to, like, the LPL season. Like, sure, at the end of the day, did Scout come out and decimate Doinb in that finals? Yes. And obviously, Scout had a much better performance at Worlds. But I think if you're just looking at the year holistically in terms of the LPL, I think Doinb was the best performing mid laner we had for that year. Then you go to the opposite side in Rookie and Karsa, where I think Rookie for me is the second best player to ever play the game. I mean, Rookie's only outshined by Faker, and everyone's outshined by Faker. Then you look at Karsa, and no matter how much people like hating on Karsa, which no one is now because they're winning and he's looking solid.
That's the key lyric.
This one's much harder, but Karsa might have the best jungle resume out of any jungle there is in terms of like the amount of championships he's picked up, top fours, his like longevity in terms of how long he's been a top player on top teams. Like, there's very few people whose resumes can outdo Karsa. So you kind of have like this like historical, but still both very good mid-jungle duo against two like current behemoths. So that'll definitely be the deciding factor of the matchup. It's also really cool because they play it differently. For V5, they play their mid-jungle for mid. For LNG, they play their mid-jungle for jungle. So I think it'll be a really cool like clash of styles coming out this weekend.
Exactly. I just expect a lot of blood. That's all I'm hoping for. Because, we are talking about that mid-jungle duo, but there are other parts to the Rift. I know the spotlight shines so that other people don't get as much attention. But I still, maybe not so much towards the bot side. I do feel like the support jungle matchup is going to be super interesting as we see that involvement. But the top lane itself, Rich versus Ala as well, is going to be so heated up there.
I actually really like this matchup because I think Rich has impressed me. Rich has looked much better than, the people I talked to in the LCK, or like the fans who follow LCK community sentiment would lead me to believe, where the verdict coming in was like, well, Rich won't even really be an upgrade to Invincible. Like, they're interchangeable players. But I think Rich has looked solid. I really like watching him play his carry style champions. He's one of the few top laners willing to pull out things like the Irelia, and he has like some just really fun mechanical outplays on that champion. He's finding solo kills, like when he picked the Akshan up against the Shy and just completely dominated him in that laning phase. So I think Rich is really fun. I think Rich is hit or miss in terms of how he's able to do. I think he has like a set few champions in like certain matchups that he knows really well and is really good on. And then in terms of team fighting, I feel like V5 as a whole are not very coordinated in their team fights, which is good and bad, Mazel. It's good and bad.
Good and bad.
When you have stacked mechanical players, I think it's kind of better if it's like a bit of a free-for-all in these team fights, and it's like, okay, Rookie's mechanically outplaying here, and Rich is outplaying over here, because it works for them. But it also leads to a lot of moments where I've seen Rich try to find flanks on the backline, come in too early, just the whole enemy team turns and kills him, and now V5 are left in a 4v5, so that's how I feel about
I will
Rich.
say, though, like, the top side of the map is obviously going to be super important. I think they'll be looking to that Ala and Rich matchup to be pretty volatile and determine a lot of what that early pathing looks like. But for me, with how the meta has completely focused, it seems like, on this ADC carry world, it's interesting to me that we get a matchup like this that might go that way, but has the tendency not to. But it's still Photic and PP God versus Light and Lumao, which I think can have a lot of volatility in its own right in that bottom lane and lead to that extra craziness in this series itself.
Yeah, and let me just quickly give a nice shout out to Light, because I feel like Light was someone I wasn't giving like due respect to. Like, I never thought Light was bad by any means, right? Light has always been a solid AD carry, but I feel like Light has actually been stepping up and having a pretty big role in terms of LNG's wins, because when LNG's macro starts to fall apart a little bit in the mid game, if it is a close, even game and they didn't, get the clean snowball, Light is typically the one who has to step up and be that big carry. And in their recent series against RNG, LNG were playing the whole like 4-man dive bot every game style. It didn't work for them. They did end up with a loss, but it really surprised me how many resources they were putting into that bottom lane, because I think that's a pretty good plan against V5. I think Karsa's a lot less lane-oriented than he was on top esports. I'd still say he is more so focused on playing for his lanes rather than playing for himself, but it's not like he's just like gank bot, gank top, gank mid. No, he's still farming. He's still looking for invades. He's doing other things. So I think you could possibly find windows where all of V5's lanes like to play pretty aggressively to be able to punish that bottom lane for the side of LNG. So I think for LNG, that's one place you can be happy about. Lumao has not been running it down lately, which is great. I love Lumao as a player. This guy was...
That's a good bar to have, I would say.
This guy was the MVP of the win that JDG had. His Bard play will live in my memory forever. 2020 Spring Lumao, your Bard, amazing. And yeah, I think Lumao's been doing better recently. So I think that's one area where I expect LNG to come out ahead. The one thing I will say for V5's bottom lane is going back to the whole theme of like V5 are a more aggressive team as I stop shaking my desk, which is shaking my camera. I think Photic has shown he is willing to, walk forward, look for aggressive plays in these team fights, which could be really exciting if V5's bottom lane doesn't get like pincered by LNG's dives or their proactivity either.
Well, and I want to go into that bot lane conversation a little bit more, because they've started off that bot lane focus with the fact that, the meta is focusing towards the AD carries, and especially coming out of the bot lane with some resources and being able to snowball that as well is super important right now. So you, as the only analyst here, as we don't have our secondary analyst, I got to get me a check-in on the meta and how the LPL is doing so far in that meta, because I feel like, that chaos, that early snowball is fitting the style the LPL likes. But we're starting to see some of these games where they go a little long and we have 8,000-10,000 gold swings. Like, the fact that we see drastic differences after the 20-minute mark is insane.
I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with the meta, though. I think that just right now, globally, League of Legends is worse than it was during Worlds. That makes sense. It is the start of a new season. There's new changes, there were breaks. But in terms of the meta, I actually find it really interesting how we've started to see more and more teams trend towards putting resources in top side. Weibo, I think, is the big one who, you look at Weibo and where they are in the standings, and like in terms of like their first dragon or their dragon percentages, they're like bottom 4 in the league. For Weibo, it's been all about playing up towards the Rift Herald, getting the early gold advantage, and I believe it was their last series, if I'm not a complete idiot, or it might have been the EDG series, where I think we were like 20 minutes in the game when we got our first dragon, which really blew my mind for like the time period we're at.
Yeah.
But I think
I mean, we've been seeing like games go without souls. We've been getting up to like huge stacks, six full dragons, 3 on each side, but then nobody ever claims a soul because the games are just ending by then.
And it's one of those things where I feel like people came in, especially with the addition of new dragons and like the buffs to certain champions in the bottom lane, where it's like, okay, we see all this on paper, it means we play around bot. Then like other things start to get changed, things like Chemtech Dragon are taken out, and I think people go back to the mentality of last year where it's like, well, no, early dragons still don't matter. It's still more efficient to play the game, just setting up for early Herald. I think it was IG as well. I saw Shun say in one of the like the pregame interviews, right, the SOTs, where he came out and said, oh, Dragon or Herald, which one's more important? Herald, get the early advantage, snowball from there. I think that shows the mindset of most LPL teams.
Yeah.
I will say, though...
we get 5v5 fights around the first Herald, like in every single series. Like, it's literally clockwork at this point, which I love, because I don't have to spend any time building anything up.
Me
we
too.
just go straight into fighting at 8 minutes in. But the fact is, like, that is interesting that that's a commonality to me that we're not seeing anywhere else, really.
The only place I hear it also is happening is apparently LCK, which, again, I don't know for sure. I haven't watched, but I've been seeing quite a few people make the memes on Twitter of, like, 10K, like 5K gold behind at Second Herald, need to fight it. 2K gold ahead at Second Herald, we need to fight it. 3v5 at Second Herald, we need to fight it. Those types of jokes. So apparently, us and LCK, kindred spirits.
Yeah, exactly. Great minds think alike.
But just in regards to LPL, I've always felt like LPL is one of these regions where, like, there's no easy way to, like, describe the meta, since I feel like teams here are more specialized, more individualistic. One of the big trends in LPL has always just been having your support link up with mid and jungle more than I think in other regions, which is why we still don't see enchanters at the frequency that we see in other leagues, which I'm all for. Like, dude,
same. Sign me up.
Screw Karma, Leona, and all this stuff. Give me Nautilus, Leona every game. I am totally fine with it.
Give me the engage, the essence of the LPL.
And you can see a lot of teams look lost when they don't have support on engage.
They do.
I think it is really changing a little bit with Hecarim coming back into the meta, where you can see more Lulus, you can see more Karmas down in that bottom side because you already have that engage supplemented by your jungler. So,
is the meta just going to be cyclical? Are we just going to go back to Hecarim Udyr days and we're just going to have that over and over again?
I hope not.
Is this where we're headed?
I find the Hecarim
one... We got the enchanters back.
I find the Hecarim one really interesting as well, right? Because Hecarim didn't get any, like, buffs or nerfs in regards to, like, coming back on the patch. It's just like
tempo gaming, baby.
I feel like teams just realize in terms of, like, hey, there's a lot of, like, long ranging, like, poke and these sort of things getting this out. The change to turbo chem tank, I think, is really nice in terms of, like, how the damage is proc now, of you, like, getting the charges by dealing damages or moving, then getting that one big auto. I've seen that, like, that damage always surprises me when Hecarim runs in and gets that coming off. And then even, like, small pseudo buffs to him, like Force of Nature and these types of items getting buffed over the past few months. And players just realizing, hey, add all this stuff together, Hecarim's a good pick, especially when we see a lot of junglers getting banned out.
And it's the fact that it fits the jungle mold in the LPL so much, because at a second's notice, you can hit that onslaught of shadows and you're going all the way across the screen, completely clearing out a team fight, and it sets up the wombo combos that we love to see constantly, it feels like.
I feel like it's one of the other reasons we've seen Orianna coming back and so strong. It's like having more setup around her in other lanes, because we've seen so much Hecarim Orianna over the past, like, week, 2 weeks. So I'm really happy with it. I'm stoked.
You're just happy it's not Corki and Victor. Well, that's what you're happy about.
I actually didn't mind Corki versus Victor. The thing I mind, and it still happens, I just hate seeing Corki and Jinx together. Because you literally, you outrange, like, any combination you could put together on the opposite side, unless you're going to be like Jinx Xerath or something. I mean, Caitlyn Xerath or something like that, right? Like, I don't know. I'm so tired of it. I'm happy for us to be sitting on a patch for a while for once, because it shows you the adaptations teams have to make just by, like, being quick or clever, not having patches to rely on to be like, oh, this is strong or this is weak now.
Yeah, absolutely. The LPL's relationship with the meta is always so interesting to me, because it feels like it's done a little bit differently here than everywhere else, and obviously that's going to come with the different regional preferences and things along those lines, but it's just still such a cool question to always talk about the meta, and especially how the LPL is adapting to it. So thank you for the little check-in, Mr. Lyric. But I need a check-in of my own, because my positivity is waning here, Mr.
Shut up. You're a liar. You're a liar.
I am a liar. I'm full of positivity, baby.
Wait. Quick tangent. Quick tangent for the people. We need to tell the people.
What?
Like, my God, I try to banter, I try to talk trash with Mazel so much just to get him to say something about me back. Trash talk me.
I'm a diamond!
Down, and he won't do it. This guy's just too nice. I'll be like, yeah, Mazel, that cast was horrible. What you said was wrong, and your shoes,
you're right,
they're mediocre. And Mazel will be like, thanks, Lyric. You also, you're a great caster.
Your eyes sparkle when you smile.
No. Just
so
be negative.
To the next point, overwhelming positivity. Ah! Give me your team
Cringe.
that looks bad right now, but that you believe in. Tell me, Lyric. Give me the positivity for once in your life. Give it to me.
I feel like we've kind of already gone over this, because I feel like for me, it's IG.
Yeah, I feel like we have two.
I feel like it's IG. I feel like it's. I really like watching IG. I really love Shun as a player.
Welcome to the Shun Stan believers. All right, welcome.
I've always been a believer. Always.
Not outright. All right, where was your plaque? Where's your belt that says Shun on it? Like, I have one.
Do you really?
Come on.
Do you actually?
But don't ask me to show it to you.
Oh, jeez. This was a team I was excited for from the beginning. I was really happy when they brought in Lucas last year instead of using someone like Reheel or Southwind, because when he was on his IG young days, I thought Lucas was a player who was extremely solid. Still not there. Like, I don't look at Lucas as a top caliber support by any means. Mm-hmm. I think Lucas very much is like serviceable, but I feel like even watching Lucas from last year to this year, he is better. His laning has slightly improved. Last year, one of my big problems with Lucas was he wouldn't take advantage of, like, I'd say, off timers of when to move. It's like Lucas would always know, like, okay, we pushed out bot. I can recall and I can walk mid. But he would never know how to be like, okay, my AD carry is safe in this 1v2. Maybe he's on Ezreal or like he's against Braum or something like this. I now can like create my own window and maybe something happens bot, but I can make something happen more top or mid. I feel like we've been seeing a bit more of that out of Lucas as well. Uakai has come in and I think he's looking... I'm just surprised we didn't see more used by RNG last year.
True.
With like how decent his Akali game. My God,
it's insane,
it was
dude.
Crazy. Like he was all like, oh, whoosh, and like, but so, and people were dying. So people were dying left and right.
It happens.
There was blood. There was violence, and that's the key to success in the LPL. You don't know how to make in the LPL blood and violence. So
apparently, all right. Well. Thank you for the positivity. I appreciate that. I'm going to have to mark that down in the history books because that's not going to happen again for 1,000 years.
Nope.
Mine are the Panda Warriors in anyone's legend. Oh, my God. The 50-foot Betty. It's stuck in my brain. It's stuck in my brain, man. This team, Chocho, insane. I'm riding them all the way to the top, all right? They're going to make it. They're going to make it. Although I will say it's a tall task. I mean, they have a long way to go. But I feel like this team itself, like, when they're looking good and when the bot lane is functioning, they can put up toe-to-toe with a lot of the teams in the LPL. And it might not be that top 5, but they are better than their ranking right now in the LPL. I will say that. And I know you were giving some love to Chiotio, and I'm giving some love to Betty as well. But I think as a whole, right, like being able to see Xiao Hao come into the place and have a presence that maybe I wouldn't have expected as much because you do have this bot lane overshining everybody so much. But it is integral that Xiao Hao can get that bot lane going himself. So I think this team has a lot of potential there. It's not always there, but it's there. All right,
I agree.
It's there. It's in their logo.
Yeah, honestly, AL would have been my second pick for a lower tier team I'm excited for. Even against LNG, which they lost, they came out with like a pretty dominant game 1 win, and it was specifically on Xiao Hao. Off the top of my head, I hope I'm not wrong. Please don't be wrong. He was playing the Hecarim, and he absolutely smurfed. Let me check. Am I wrong? No. Lyric is not wrong. I remember that game. Yeah, absolutely crushed it. I remember LNG were on like the Diana, Irelia combo. They started falling behind early on. And then I love the agency coming out from AL to just be like, hey, this comp has to come into us so we can just keep walking into their jungle trying to force these fights. And they did.
For me, the biggest thing, Maple hasn't been playing. It's Forge. It's Forge.
It is Forge.
It's the Forge show. And he's been popping off, man. Like, it's insane. I would have never, if you would have told me that Maple was the starter for this team at the beginning of the split, I would expect that this far into the season, he would be making a name for himself on this team. But it's Forge. And that's what's so crazy to me.
Okay.
And we've seen
Mazel,
that kind of
slow it down.
difference.
Slow it down.
What?
I got to go back
right,
to being
fine.
negative. So I've been very positive about Forge lately. I will say, after seeing like more games from Forge, I feel like Forge, like overall, has improved from where he was. Like no doubt, no question in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at Forge's like signature picks, his Akali's, his LeBlancs, terrifying. Then you kind of go to his like second tier of like
his Rise is scary too.
Well, but that's what I was gonna say. His second tier in my mind is the Rise. It's kind of like in a league of its own where it's not as good. I think he's been hit or miss on it. He's had some like standout games. He's had some games where he hasn't been able to find an impact or struggled in laning phase. Then I think once you get past that and you're like onto like Victor, TF. He even had an Oriana game, which he won, and he played relatively well. But I remember his laning was decently suspect. It's like these types of champions is where I'm like, okay, maybe having Maple in would be better. We can't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? But I'm kind of surprised they aren't dipping into using both. I do know it is quite annoying. As a coach, I did always hate using 2 players. Splitting scrim times is like so rough in terms of like the amount of practice you're kind of losing having to change systems.
Yeah.
But yeah, with a team like AL who are at the bottom, I feel like that is typically when you want to be more using like experiments in terms of like trying out these different iterations. But they quickly used Maple and were like, we've given him what, like 3 series, maybe 4. We're done now. I guess they were losing, but it was against top teams. They were losing RNG, Weibo, FPX. What do you expect?
To be fair, I thought, like, looking back at the clips and seeing some of the highlights, right, like, he did look pretty good. Like, he looked like an iteration of Maple we've seen in the past. So
he was not the worst player on the team. I'll say that much.
He was not the worst player on the team. That is plain and simple. But it has been an absolute pleasure to have you alongside me, Lyric, and to have this little duo episode here. So thank you for joining me, my friend. One last little bit of overwhelming
Thanks for forcing me to be positive, Mazel.
Yes. I got it out of him one time, ladies and gentlemen, one time. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been another episode of The Last Hit. We'll be back next week, so make sure you tune in. And until then, we'll see you on the Rift.